concise history of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, chapter 8.1a, the Battle of Uhud. Idolaters of Mecca decided to have a major battle with the Muslims to take revenge of Badr. They donated all the assets of Abu Sufyan caravan, which consisted of 1,000 camels and 50,000 dinars. Allah mentioned about it in Surah Al-Anfal, verse 36. Indeed, the disbelievers spend their wealth in order to hinder from the path of Allah, and they will keep spending their wealth. Then this wealth will become anguish for them, and finally they will be defeated, and the disbelievers will be gathered to hell. Some poets excited some tribes against the Muslims. Finally, an army of 3,000 personnel, 3,000 camels, and 200 horses marched towards Medina. There were also 8 women as cheerleaders, and to excite the men for war. Abbas radhiyallahu anhu informed the Prophet ﷺ about it by a letter. When this army reached Abwa village, Hind bin Atba, the wife of Abu Sufyan, suggested to dig and disgrace the grave of the mother of the Prophet ﷺ, buried there. However, the leaders of army did not approve it, since it could have very dangerous consequences. Finally, this army reached Ainain, near mountain Uhud, and camped there. Consultation assembly in Medina. In the consultation assembly, the Prophet ﷺ told them about a dream. He said, I saw some cows were slaughtered. There was a dent at the end of my sword, and I put my hand in safe armor. Then he ﷺ gave the interpretation of his dream. Cows slaughtered means that some companions will be killed. Dent on his sword means that some close relatives of the Prophet ﷺ will become martyrs. And safe armor means Medina. The Prophet's opinion was that Muslims should fight against the enemy by staying in Medina. Abdullah bin Abi had same opinion, although his intention was completely different. He wanted to stay away from the war without others noticing him. However, some very sincere companions insisted that we should go out of Medina to fight the enemy, since they missed participation in the Battle of Badr. On their insistence, the Prophet ﷺ gave up his opinion and appointed Abdullah bin Maktoum to be the in charge of Medina, and after Asr prayer ordered the Muslim army to proceed to the battlefield. On their way, he came across a Jew troop who were allies of Khazraj tribe. The Prophet refused to seek help of disbelievers against idolaters and did not allow them to take part in the battle. The Muslim army stopped at the site called Shaykhan. Nowadays, we can see a small masjid here. The Muslims offered Maghrib and Isha prayers at this site, and the Prophet also inspected the army and sent younger companions back to Medina. The Muslim army consisted of 1,000 men. Out of them, 100 were armored and 50 of them were horsemen. The Prophet ﷺ ordered them to proceed to the battlefield in the last part of the night, and they offered Fajr prayer at the site called Shaut. They were very close to the enemy, and both sides could see each other. The rebellion of Abdullah bin Ubay. At this critical moment, Abdullah bin Ubay went back to Medina with his 300 followers. He said two things. Number one, why should we waste our lives against this large army of idolaters? Number two, he said, my opinion was rejected in Medina while the opinion of others was accepted. Obviously, this was not the real reason. If so, he should not have left Medina. His purpose was to create confusion and disorder in the Muslim army at this critical situation. Banu Harsa and Banu Salma were also about to falter after the move of hypocrites. But Allah saved them from this disgrace. Surah Al-Imran, verse 122. إذ همت طائفتان منكم أن تفشلا والله وليهما وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. When two tribes among you intended to act cowardly, but Allah was their protector, so the believers should put their trust in Allah. Abdullah bin Haram, the father of Hazrat Jabir radiallahu anhu, reminded the hypocrites, but they flatly refused. Surah Al-Imran, verse 167. And also to let the hypocrites be known openly. And when it was said to the hypocrites, come and fight in the battle, or at least help in the defense, they said, had we known that fighting will certainly take place, we would have followed you. That day, they were much closer to disbelief than Islamic faith. They were saying with their mouths what was not in their hearts, and Allah has full knowledge of what they conceal. Hence, the Muslim army was left with only 700 men. They camped at the foot of mountain Uhud. Uhud was at their back and Medina in front of them. The war strategy of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet used a very sound war plan which speaks very high of his farsightedness and military skills. For example, he stationed 50 skillful archers led by Abdullah bin Jubair radiallahu anhu at a hillock which nowadays known as Jabal Rahma, and instructed them, if you even see that birds are eating from our bodies, do not leave your position till I send for you. And if you see we have defeated our enemy and we have crushed them, do not leave your position until I send for you. Rest of the army was also organized by a careful plan. Even the worst enemies admit that Prophet ﷺ was a genius of military leadership. The organization of army was done on 7th of Shawwal, 3rd Hijrah. Organization of Makkah army and their baiting. Abu Sufyan was commander-in-chief. Khalid bin Walid, Akramah bin Abu Jahl, Safwan bin Umayyah, and Abdullah bin Rabi'ah were his commanders. Abdul Dar family carried their flag. Abu Sufyan said to Ansar, "Leave us alone to fight our cousins. In that case, we will not fight you." The Ansar gave him a very bitter answer. In the meanwhile, Quraysh women started exciting their army with their songs, and the battle started. The initial battle. Talha bin Abu Talha came from the idolaters for a combat. Zubair bin Awan radiallahu anhu killed him. 10 persons of the family of Abu Dar who carried the flag were killed one after the other. Then a slave of them called Sawab raised the flag, but he was killed too. Their flag fell down to the ground and there was no one to carry it again. Idolaters were 3 times the number of the Muslim army, but the Muslims had upper hand and Muslims inflicted a crushing defeat to the idolaters in the battlefield. Alhamdulillah. Martyrdom of Hamza radiallahu anhu. Hamza killed several flag holders of idolaters and many other warriors of the idolaters. However, he was killed treacherously by Washi. Washi describes his plan as follows. I was a slave of Jubair bin Mut'im, whose paternal uncle was killed in Battle of Badr by the Muslims. At the time of Battle of Uhud, Jubair said to me, "If you kill Hamza, the paternal uncle of Prophet, I shall free you for good." I was hiding behind a big rock in Uhud. When Hamza was close to me, I hit him with my spear and killed him. Then I returned to the camp since I had achieved my goal. Hence, when I got back to Medina, I became a free man. This is in Bukhari. Although it was a big loss for the Muslims, still Muslims had upper hand. Performance of archers. Khalid bin Walid attacked the Muslim army 3 times with his horsemen, but the archers performed very well and thwarted his strong assaults. Idolaters were defeated and there was no one from them even to carry their flag. Bara bin Azib narrated, when we fought the idolaters, they fled away and their women could be seen fleeing in the mountain with their anklets and legs revealed. It's given in Bukhari. The Muslims followed the fleeing enemy, putting them to sword, and Muslims also started collecting booty. The archer's fatal mistake. 40 of the archers could not resist collecting the booty like other Muslims, and they deserted their post in spite of the reminder of Jubair radiallahu anhu. Khalid bin Walid noticed this, and the idolaters attacked the Muslims again. He killed Jubair radiallahu anhu and his remaining 9 men, and encircled Muslims' army from the rear. The horsemen shouted, and the idolaters took notice of the change. A woman idolater named Amra bint Alqama picked up the flag of idolaters, and they gathered around the flag and started fighting again. Hence, the Muslims were entrapped by the enemy from the front and rear. Now, the Prophet ﷺ had 2 options. Number 1, to flee for his life and abandon the army. Number 2, at the risk of his life, he gathered the Muslims and tried to take shelter in Uhud mountain. He followed the second option and called out the Muslims loudly, although he knew his voice will be noticed by the idolaters before it reached the Muslims. The idolaters recognized him and reached that position even before other Muslims could do so. It was a very delicate situation. Muslims were divided into three groups. One, the first group fled to their lives. The first group fled for their lives. Some went to Medina and others to the mountain. Number two, the second group returned to the battlefield but were mixed with idolaters. When idolaters were defeated in the battle of Uhud, Satan then called out, O slaves of Allah, beware of the rear. The enemy is approaching you from behind. So those who were at the front turned back and fought the ones who were behind. In this situation, Muslims killed Huzaifa bin Yaman's father, even though he shouted to inform the Muslim that it was his father. Huzaifa radiallahu anhu then said, May Allah forgive the Muslims who killed my father. And Urwa radiallahu anhu said, By Allah, I found Huzaifa always full of goodness till he died. This is in Bukhari. Huzaifa radiallahu anhu refused to take any blood money for the murder of his father and recommended that it should be spent in charity. Allah describes these war activities in Surah Al-Imran, verse 152. And Allah did indeed fulfill His promise to you when you were killing the disbelievers with Allah's permission until you lost your courage and you disputed about the order and disobeyed the order of the Prophet ﷺ after we have fulfilled your wish, i.e., the initial victory of Battle of Uhud was granted to you by Allah. And some of you desired the world and some of you desired the hereafter. Allah then removed His help and then made you run away from them, run away from the disbelievers to test you, to test your faith. Although this temporary defeat was due to your actions, Allah has indeed forgiven you, and Allah is most gracious to the believers. Allah gave more detail of it in Surah Al-Imran, verse 153. That time is worth remembering when you were running away and did not even look to anyone, and the Prophet ﷺ was calling you from your rear. You did not pay attention to him. Allah gave you distress, that means change of victory to defeat, followed by another distress, that means injuries to the believers, to teach you neither to grieve for what you have lost nor to grieve for the hardships that had fallen on you. Allah is well aware of what you do. Hence, Allah provided you with proper punishment and training. Even in such confusion, many Muslims fought the idolaters very gallantly. For example, Anas bin Nadr fought and was killed with over 80 cuts of swords, arrows, and spears on his body. Nobody could have recognized his dead body till his sister recognized him by the tips of his fingers. This is given in Bukhari. The third group of Muslims fought around the Prophet ﷺ to protect and defend the Prophet ﷺ. They were 9, 7 from Ansar and 2 from Muhajirin. A violent battle broke out between the 9 Muslims and the idolaters. 7 Ansars were killed one by one in defending the Prophet ﷺ, as given in Muslim. The most critical hour in the Prophet's life. It is given in Bukhari. Now only Talha bin Ubaidullah and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas were with the Prophet ﷺ. The idolaters attacked the Prophet again and again. Utbah bin Abi Waqas hit the Prophet with a stone. The Prophet fell on his side and one of his teeth was broken and his lip was cut too. Abdullah bin Shahab injured the Prophet's forehead. Abdullah bin Kaima hit the Prophet on his shoulder and then on his cheek. It was so strong that two rings of his iron ringed helmet penetrated into the holy cheek. It is mentioned in Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ said, I wonder how can people who cut their Prophet's cheek and break his tooth while he invites them to worship Allah can ever be successful. Then the Prophet said again and again in a dua, O my Allah, forgive my people since they do not know. That's given in Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ gave all his arrows to Sa'd bin Abi Waqas and said, shoot the arrows, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you. This is in Bukhari. Note that Prophet ﷺ never said such wording to anybody except Sa'd. Subhanallah. Talha was also defending the Prophet ﷺ very gallantly, and his fingers were cut and later his hand became paralyzed. It's given in Bukhari. Talha had about 39 or 35 wounds. The Prophet ﷺ said, anybody want to see a martyr walking on the earth? He should see Talha bin Ubaidullah. Subhanallah. In this critical situation, Allah's help came. Sa'd narrated, on the day of Uhud, I saw two men dressed in white who were defending the Prophet fiercely. I had never seen ones similar to them, neither before the battle of Uhud nor after it. In another version, they were Jibreel alayhi salam and Mikail alayhi salam, as given in Bukhari. Gathering of companions around the Prophet. The above events took place very fast. The first companion to reach the Prophet ﷺ was Abu Bakr, followed by Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiyallahu anhu. They noticed that two rings of the iron ringed helmet had penetrated the Prophet's cheek. Abu Ubaidah radiyallahu anhu pulled one ring out with his mouth and Abu Ubaidah's one tooth was broken. Then Abu Ubaidah pulled the second ring out and his another tooth was also broken. In the meanwhile, a group of companions gathered around the Prophet to protect him from the idolaters. For example, Hatib bin Balta killed Utbah bin Abi Waqas. During the fight, Qatada bin Na'man's one eye was hurt and he fell down on his cheek. The Prophet ﷺ put the eye back into its socket with his hand and it healed instantly and he became more sharp-sighted than before. Abdurrahman bin Auf sustained 20 wounds during fighting. The wound in his leg made him lame. Amara radiyallahu anha struck Ibn Qaima with her sword several times, but he survived because he was wearing two armors. Musab bin Umair radiyallahu anhu also fought fiercely and he was carrying the flag in his right hand. During the fight, his right hand was cut off Hence he held the flag by his left hand till it was also cut off. He knelt down and held the flag with his chest and neck. Ibn Qama made him martyr, and Ibn Qama shouted that the Prophet has been killed, since the Prophet resembled Musab a lot. This rumor affected the morale of some Muslims, but it also decreased the assault from the idolaters, since they thought that they have achieved their final objective. Hence, the idolaters turned towards mutilating the dead bodies of the martyrs. Hence, the Prophet ﷺ handed the flag to Ali radiallahu anhu. Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu recognized the Prophet ﷺ, and he announced it loudly. On hearing this, about 30 Muslims gathered around the Prophet ﷺ quickly. The Prophet gradually withdrew to the hillock nearby. Then the rest of the army reached that safe position. In this way, the genius plan of the Prophet foiled the plan of Khalid bin Walid. Note that during this fierce fighting, slumber overcame Muslims, as mentioned in Al Imran, verse 154. ثم أنزلنا عليكم من بعد الغم أمنة وعسى يخشى طائفة منكم. Then we provided you with comfort after this distress, when slumber overcame a group of you and it wiped out your distress. Indeed, slumber is a blessing of Allah in war and is a curse during praying. Mutilation of martyrs. The idolaters were almost certain of the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Hence, they returned to their camp and started preparations to go back to Mecca. Some men and women started cutting the ears and noses and the genitals of martyrs. Hind bin Utbah took out the liver of Hamza radiallahu anhu and chewed it and then spit it out. She even made the ears and noses of Muslims martyrs into anklet and necklaces for her, as given in Ibn Hisham. Participation of Muslim women. When the fighting was finished, some Muslim women came to the battlefield carrying water bags on their shoulders, and they served water to the wounded people, as mentioned in Bukhari. Among them were Asha radiallahu anha, Sulaim radiallahu anha, Sulayt radiallahu anha, and Ayman radiallahu anha. Saul narrated, Fatima radiallahu anha washed the wound of her father, while Ali radiallahu anhu poured water from a container. When Fatima realized that the flow of the blood increased with water, she took a piece of straw mat, burnt it, and stuck it to the wound. It ceased the flow of blood, as mentioned in Bukhari. Abu Sufyan's remarks. When the idolaters were ready to depart for Makkah, Abu Sufyan climbed the mountain Uhud and called out, Is there Muhammad among you? They did not answer him. Then he asked, Is there Abu Bakr among you? They did not answer. Then he asked, Is Umar bin Khattab among you? They did not answer, since the Prophet did not allow them to answer. Abu Sufyan then said, We have relieved you from three of them. Umar could not resist to answer him. He said, All those three are still alive. Abu Sufyan said, I did not order the mutilation of the dead body, but it did not displease me. He added, Hubal, our idol, is supreme. The Muslim said, Allah is more supreme, exalted, and mightier. Abu Sufyan said, Uzza, another idol, is ours, but you have no Uzza. Muslim said, Allah is our protector, but you have no protector. Abu Sufyan said, Today we have taken revenge of Badr. Umar said, "Our killed men are placed in paradise, but yours are in fire." Abu Sufyan asked Umar, "Please tell me the truth. Have we killed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" Umar said, "No, and he is listening to your words." Abu Sufyan said, For me, you are more truthful than Ibn Qaima." This all is in Bukhari. When Abu Sufyan was leaving, he said, "We will meet again at Badr next year." The Prophet ﷺ said to one of his men to tell him, "Yes, it is an appointment for both of us," as given in Ibn Hisham. This topic will continue inshallah in next presentation. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم